Welcome everyone to our webinar series, Decipher the Dating Code, Solving the Mysteries of Dating and Relationship in the 21st Century. My name is Dr. Dan Amzalag, and I'm your moderator for today's workshop. So here is a quick bit about myself. I am a cognitive behavior psychotherapist and marriage and relationship coach, passionate about helping people build healthy and long-lasting relationships. Now, these workshop series explore the many challenges of modern dating, from online interaction and communication struggles to emotional availability and genuine connections. So our goal here is to help you navigate today's complex dating scene with clarity, confidence, and purpose. So joining me today at this workshop is our expert panelist, Sybil Cummin, a licensed professional counselor sharing her extensive knowledge in the field of clinical psychology, and we will also discuss the challenges behind dating apps in the 21st century. But before we begin this workshop, I'll invite our guest panelist to briefly introduce herself, as no one else can do a better job. Ms. Cummin, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. I'm Sybil Cummin. I have been working as a therapist in relationships for over a decade. And in that work, I've actually really specialized in working with relationships where there is coercive control and domestic violence. And so I work with adults, I work with protective parents, but I also work with children in those relationships. So I've got a pretty wide look at some of the more scary elements of dating, the more scary elements of relationships, how difficult it is to see the coercion and control that's in those relationships. And yeah, I'm excited to share kind of my knowledge with you all today so that your dating can feel safe and that you feel really confident that you know what you're looking for.
Absolutely. And it is such a pleasure to have you here, Sybil, because I know you and I, we talked about it last year. So finally today, we have you on into the workshop. So let's get started with something that is really a common practice with many who are using dating apps, and it is swiping either left or right. Now, if you could just help us understand the principle of how to swipe smart. And I know that we have to start dating with intention and not really just focus our selection, but with superficial attraction and more on the profile details, if those profiles are actually put any effort in writing them. So how do you suggest, if someone doesn't have really a thorough profile about themselves, how do you go and decide if this is something worth pursuing?
Yeah, I think it actually happens before you hop on your app, because I think what's really important is to know yourself and know what your values are, know what you're looking for, because everyone wants to be seen, everyone wants to be attracted to someone, desired. And so a lot of times those values and the things that truly matter to us, that goes out the door when we see someone really attractive. We're like, oh, they're interested in me. Okay. And so I think that before we get into that piece where it's a lot harder to pay attention to, is be really intentional about what you want in your relationship right now. And it might be really hard to see, like, in just the small bit of information in the profiles that you're seeing, to know if that's a fit. I would say something to look for are patterns, right? So if you're seeing the same thing in your dating, in the dating profiles, the exact same thing, and it feels fake, it might be fake. And so to listen to that gut feeling. So even if they are saying yes to you, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to say yes back, even though it feels good to be wanted. So I think the main thing is, again, knowing yourself, knowing what is standing out to you, and kind of questioning those things too.
But every relationship begins with chemistry, like physical chemistry.
Yes.
So this is something that we should we not put too much attention on, or because of the many filters that we see now available in the market when it comes to people misleading others with how old they are, because now suddenly they have any wrinkles on the picture, or maybe the pictures were taken 15 years or 30 years ago. How do we go into determining if this is something that is really valid?
Yeah, I think it's so hard, right? And so it's like, giving certain things a chance, right? If everything else in the profile feels really safe and good to you, you can give it a chance, because that doesn't mean that you are dating this person. This is not the person you're going to marry, maybe, right? And so it's like, how can you give it a chance, but keeping all of those things in mind? So there's the immediate chemistry. And then if you find out later that, like, oh, they used a 15-year-old picture, they are not 6 feet tall, they are actually 5'9". Does that matter to you? Maybe or maybe not, right? But in that regard, it's like, are we looking for patterns of inconsistencies and little white lies? Because those little white lies, if there's lots of them,
Mhm.
that is a red flag. That's something you need to look at. So I think it's kind of all of the above, is knowing what you're looking for. If there is a chemistry there and you are interested, to swipe, but knowing, and we'll talk about this in a little bit when we talk about attachment,
Yes.
knowing the swipe doesn't mean this is my person.
Okay. But then again, when you say that about what you're looking for, are you talking about deal breakers?
Some are going to be deal breakers, and some are like maybes.
Okay.
Right. But if you're looking for a deal breaker, this is just an example. And I am married, and so I don't need this. But when I first hopped on Instagram, I had so many people DMing me pictures of them like washing their fancy car, or with their dog, or these things. And their goal was to meet me and get into some sort of relationship with me. Okay, if you're washing your fancy car, not interested, because that's not something that is of value to me. Like, that financial
Okay.
piece that they're trying to show is like, look at my fancy car, and that is just not right. That doesn't fit my values in general. And again, I'm married, so I was not swiping or DMing anyone back, but it was really interesting to see what was showing up in my messages. It was so fascinating. And so you may see, like, okay, pictures at the gym flexing in the mirror.
Yes.
Not for me.
Okay.
Like, not for me. And that's okay. That's okay, because that may mean something about that person that is not a fit for you.
But then again, okay, so let me put you in terms of the concept of consistency when it comes to sexual chemistry. Okay. Now, we know that between long-term and short-term commitment with someone, and when I say commitment, obviously we do not know this at the beginning, but for anyone in particular, do they prefer to have someone who is very, very communicative, someone who is sending texts constantly, versus someone who is really gorgeous, or they have great sexual chemistry with, and they've done the video call. So it's not like a fake picture from
Yeah.
Metropolitan magazine or a JQ magazine. So the person is real. So when the person is real and they find that strong sexual chemistry, do they still have to question themselves about what about long term? What about that consistency that may or may not be there? So what kind of priority should they put it?
Yes. Yes, I think that that's really important. And granted, I come from a little bit of a biased perspective, because every adult that I work with has been in an abusive relationship. So, but some of the things that we look at are, how quickly is this relationship moving forward?
Okay.
Right? Because we know that there are things that happen in early on in the relationship, and someone who is coercive, who's manipulative, who's going to be controlling, they will move faster in the relationship. And a lot of times they will really lean on that sexual chemistry versus other things. But someone who is really skilled at manipulation is actually, and this is scary, not meant to scare anyone, this is just information, is really skilled at understanding what you want. So there are going to be some women who, or and men, right? I specifically work with women, but this goes both ways, where they are really looking for like this exciting relationship where they feel desired.
Okay.
And everyone wants to feel desired. But some people, based on their histories and even just personalities and their chemistry in their bodies, want that quick, exciting, constant connection with someone, and that sexual chemistry can be used to get you stuck in an abusive relationship. It could be someone else who is not as interested in that. And maybe there is still sexual chemistry, but they really are like, I'm looking for my long-term someone. I'm looking for my person. Their focus may be on making sure that values are aligned. And in that case, someone who is manipulative, abusive, they will move away from that sexual like focus, and they will start to mirror your value system back to you. So it seems like their values match yours. They are just deeply listening to you, that they are your soulmate. And then you can get stuck. And so that is why they move really quickly in that, is because they need to get you stuck as soon as they possibly can get you stuck. So I think it is when you're in that whirlwind of a really exciting, full of sexual chemistry relationship, you do need to step back and look at everything else, making sure that we don't have our blinders on, because it is really easy to get pulled in. And then it's really hard to get yourself pulled out of that.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask you a very challenging question, Sybil.
Mhm.
In the beginning, we started with the swiping smart and reading very, very detailed profiles to be able to understand the other person that you want to be matched with. But then at the same time, you have to give yourself the time to write a detailed profile about what you're looking for. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, that is my understanding.
But then here's the paradox. More detailed you are, and
Yes.
more opportunity for those who are going to manipulate you are going to read what you are and what you're looking for, and they're going to abide by what you're looking for and
Yes.
to manipulate you this way. So isn't it in a way counterintuitive or counterproductive to give too much information about yourself so others can take advantage of that?
Yes. And so it really is like scary, right? It's scary to put yourself out there in general,
Mm,
right? I would say especially when I'm working with people who feel like an open book and
yes,
they share everything with anyone, it's like, hey, let's take a step back. Let's dip our toe in the water before we share your whole life, before we share all your vulnerabilities. I know some people in their dating profiles put things about previous trauma
yes,
in
correct.
their dating profiles, which it's like a yes and. I do want the person that you connect with to know about your history. And maybe not in that initial profile writing, because and not everyone, right? Not everyone is going to be manipulative and abusive. That is not, accurate, that it's like every other person is going to be like that. And there are people like that are going to. So it is a paradox. You are stuck in this place of how vulnerable can I be,
Mhm.
knowing if I put a lot of detail that gives someone like a heads up on how to manipulate you.
Advantage, yeah. But nowadays, what based on your experience, Sybil, what behaviors are more prominent in genders? Is it more men taking advantage or is it more women? Is it 50-50, or where do you see there's more is it tilting towards the male taking advantage of women who are older, more vulnerable, or is it vice versa?
I think it depends on what they are doing, like the goal, like their end goal. So if the goal is to have power and control over someone, then males are going to be more likely to be that manipulative person.
Okay.
But I think that on the flip side, there are other ways that um, people can then take advantage of you. Again, my specialty is in that course of control and domestic violence. Um, and so it is higher numbers of males abusing females in cis male, cis female heterosexual relationships. Um, and women can be abusive too. It looks different.
Yes.
It looks different. The lethality is significantly different. The physical abuse, it does happen, female to male. It does happen in less frequency. So some of the things that you can kind of look for, and I think women are scared. They're more scared than men are scared. And so I think that women are going to be more hypervigilant to look out for risk factors than men.
Okay.
Um, that is not good or bad. It just is based on, the numbers of women who are not just abused by their partners, but just abused in their lives. But then, especially like males who are more vulnerable, and anyone, I'll put this out there, domestic violence and coercive control does not discriminate based on like childhood trauma. You
Okay.
can have a full, like healthy, secure relationship with your family of origin, and you can still be manipulated by someone who's abusive. That is true. And if you're putting different trauma histories and different things like that, male or female, um, it is like a sign, like, hey, you might be able to control me.
Absolutely. But then again, here's the big trick, or I would say the biggest challenge that most women or men go through. Now, I'm not sure if it's more women do this or less, but when we talk about men who are very expressive, men who kind of like are so excited to be able to come across someone that it potentially meet all of their criteria, or vice versa. And because this is a market where it is so rare to find such a good person, that they will display their love quickly, which is also called
Yeah.
bombing. Um, after how long do you feel, Sybil, that love bombing doesn't come as a red flag, but more as a form of communication and expression?
Yeah, I think you have to look at the underlying intention of it, which is hard, right? This is so hard to, if it was really easy to pick out, I would be out of a job, right? Like I would not be working with as many people as I'm working with if it was really easy. So it is really difficult. I think it also, so if they are just really communicative, they do want to be with you all the time. And it is just them sharing like how they feel in these big ways with you. That feels different than feeling pressure to move in together, pressure to move faster than you want to do, pressure to only spend time with this person,
Mm.
right? Because even, especially initially in those early stages, you're smitten and you want to spend time with your person, right? And if that there isn't allowance, or there isn't a comfort with you going out, with your girlfriends or your male friends, and this is going to be your only person, then that is something to pay attention to. If there's any pressure, if they're guilting you
Mhm.
into being with them, if they're saying things about your friends or about your family, like, well, they will never understand us,
Uh,
they are going to try and break us up, they are just jealous of what we have, versus like, gosh, like, I want to spend all my time with you, and so it makes me sad that you're going out with your friends, I'll just go out with my friends.
yeah.
Right. And so that's actually a huge warning flag, in my opinion, to look at is, does this other person have other people in their world?
Oh,
Because someone with higher levels of narcissistic traits, they do not typically have true close relationships with anybody.
because they broke them.
They broke them, they really struggle, there's not going to be reciprocal, it's going to be very transactional, the relationships are transactional versus like real connection and intimacy. And they have learned, and this is, they are the way they are for reasons, right? They're not just like the devil, evil people. They are this way for reasons. And so they have learned in their world to work this way. So what they can put on, like the mask they can put on of true intimacy, some of them are really good. And over time, it doesn't stay with you. And so if they don't have like any friends, close friends, that is a warning sign, in my opinion, because it shows that they probably struggle to connect with people on an emotional level.
Mm. But then again, here's the biggest challenge here, Sybil, is that if, let's say, a woman and a man just meet in those dating site, okay, And the woman in her past relationship, she had PTRS, which is post-traumatic relationship syndrome, where
Mhm.
her past man ignored her. And then suddenly she come across someone that's putting a lot of time onto her. Would she
Yeah.
see this as a red flag or as saying, oh my God, finally someone that is putting time for me? And she will completely ignore those red flags from a narcissistic behavior. So how do you kind of like dissociate yourself from what happened into the past and look at what's going on now to avoid falling in that trap that you were talking about?
Yeah, because it happens so often. And you can kind of go one or two ways. If you had a relationship that was abusive in some way, and we're not talking about physical abuse all the time, right? There are many different ways to abuse and have power and control over someone else. So I see like both. There, it's very rare that I see something right in the middle. I either see someone who's going to jump in, like cannonball in because this person is really giving them all this attention, or they're like, I ain't never connecting again. I am never gonna get married. I am never gonna date seriously because people who say, who say that you can trust them are untrustworthy.
That's correct. Yes.
So like, whoop, there's like one of both ways. And so I think it is the what makes sense. And again, if we're talking about this very early sign, like very, very early stages of dating, it's harder to do it. As you move further on, I always tell my people that they need to move slow. These relationships, even if they feel so gosh darn good, they need to move slow because if there is a mask, it will slip.
Mhm.
They will be able to start to see patterns of inconsistencies.
I see.
And so if they, cannonball and they're like, oh my gosh, let's move in together, really early, they're not going to give themselves the time to see like, oh, they say this is their best friend and they're hanging out right now, but they actually don't have any friends like from childhood, or they don't have, from early on, or they don't, these friends kind of stay and then they go away, or maybe it doesn't give you a chance to see how they talk about other people,
Mhm.
right? So how they talk about other people is a really big indicator. If they're constantly talking poorly about everyone else, they're making fun of people. They're being very harsh, and then it's just a joke. Don't take things, that's I'm just exaggerating, or I'm just you're taking things so seriously. Those kinds of things. If you move really fast, you are not going to be able to see the mask slip.
I see.
And so, as exciting as it is, slowing things down is going to be your number one way to start to like see and suss out, is this real or is this someone manipulating me?
Okay, but then if we go back to those, you were talking about attachment style there, like in the beginning of the workshop. So, if we go into codependent relationship, if we go and figure out exactly what caused, like in the principle of causality, the cause and effect, what really caused someone to feel so much in need to be able to connect with the other person because they've been ignored in the past. So, how do we manage those attachment style? How do we kind of like look at ourselves first to see how we can fix us or fix ourselves
Mhm.
before we feel ready to get into a relationship and before we feel ready that our behaviors and our values and our actions can align properly with the other person. But if we don't know the other person well enough, it's very hard to judge that.
Yes, 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 yes. It is so hard. And I think something, right? Attachment styles, they started when you were born.
Mm,
Right. So when we're looking at attachment, we're looking at how, like, were your needs met as a tiny person? That's what we're looking at when we're looking at attachment. And so when I said before, like I talked about secure attachment, that is basically that your needs were met 80% of the time, emotional needs, physical needs, all of the needs of a baby, through toddlers, through young childhood, that those were met. And so your core belief is, I am worthy of love, I am worthy of connecting, and people are trustworthy because my caregivers are trustworthy. So those people can also get stuck in abusive relationships. And so I think that I want to make sure that if you have one of these other attachment types, you're not like, oh my gosh, I'm doomed. Or if you're in a secure secure attachment with your caregivers, that you're like, oh, then I'm good. Like, I don't have to worry. I don't have to think about this, because you do. But in that kind of what you're talking about, in that kind of codependent feel, that anxious attachment, you're growing up, your caregivers were not consistent. So sometimes they were with you and loving on you and meeting every need, and then all of a sudden they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know what to do. And so you're like holding on so tight when someone gives you some connection, gives you some attention. And that can cause a real tricky thing with the love bombing that we're talking about, because dang, it feels so good.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it starts to go away, you will do everything in your power, because that fear of abandonment, that fear of losing it, that connection is so strong that you will take it on yourself to fix it.
I see.
And that might mean doing things that go completely against your value system. That might mean excusing any abusive behavior that happens just to feel the good times again. And so there's, right, so we do have to know that. And then there's an avoidant behavior, and that is if typically if your caregivers, you had your emotional needs just were not met. So maybe your physical needs were met, you had a home, you had food, you went to school, you did extracurriculars, but there was no emotional connection with your caregiver. You kind of learn, well, I got to do it all on my own.
I
I'm
see.
on my own here.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and you'll see, and I'm sure you know this, that a lot of these different attachment styles kind of like come together and causes a lot of difficulties in relationships when that happens. And so a lot of people think if they had this avoidant attachment, that they are not going to be fooled, or they are not going to be pulled in by love bombing.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if it is, and to some extent, they're not actually gonna like that real quick closeness. That's gonna feel really scary, because connection is like, I
Yeah,
don't know, I can do this on my own. And if someone is really good at reading you, they will allow some space. They will allow that to where you start sharing your vulnerabilities. And then that's when they've kind of got you, because they can use those later if they're manipulative.
mm-hmm.
Again, if this is someone who is, maybe they're dealing with their own attachment stuff, they will probably not, they're not going to use this information on purpose to harm you.
I see.
And then if you unfortunately had significant trauma in your family of origin, there's something, some people call it anxious avoidant attachment, some people call it fearful avoidant attachment. And it's kind of the most confusing, because you desire connection so much, and yet that is the scariest thing ever. And so connection doesn't feel safe to you, and you want it so much, but it doesn't feel safe. So
I
in
see.
that regard, again, it's like the goal of this other person, if their goal is to get you stuck, is to do everything that they can to make you feel safe
Mhm.
first.
I see.
And so I don't even remember your full question, because I just started talking about attachment. But yes, it is so difficult to early on to decipher this. So there is a lot of knowing self in order to show up in relationships, and in order to understand, is this a red flag for me? Is this, how is this impacting me? So there's a lot of work on self.
But here's the one thing as well, Sybil, that can work against you long term, which means that if, let's say, for example, a woman has been going to different dates, they're having different relationship and all that, and she was always abandoned. Okay, the guy leaves and whatever it is, just like what she had when she was young, where her father abandoned her and he left the family. So maybe
Yeah.
she felt responsible for what happened. So
Mhm.
eventually, after those series of abandonment, don't the woman kind of try to, as a defense mechanism, create herself in a position where she abandons the other person before she feels abandoned again.
Yes.
Kind of like try to be proactive and leave the relationship, even if it's a good one, because in the back of her mind, she thinks that eventually he will abandon her. So she kind of like shuts down completely and she detached herself from the existing relationship. So is that common?
Yes, I see that in a lot of areas. And some of the work I have done in my, in my career, but then also that shows up within these kinds of relationships. I've done a lot of work with sexual trauma. And in it's just a pretty intense example of that. But it's your survival. Your nervous system is going to do what it needs to do to keep you safe. So if that means putting up walls because the last person who said that you could trust them and showed up in all these ways that you were like, yes, I can trust them, and then they assaulted you,
Yes.
your nervous system would be like, nope, I don't trust that person. Nope, I don't trust that person. And so if you're not doing your own healing work to look at those traumas, and it doesn't have to be that extreme of a trauma, but if you're not doing that work, you can absolutely push away people who might be your person, who might be, and maybe they're not your long term, you're going to marry and ride off into the sunset with them, but someone who could be a good, loving relationship for you, you might push those away. And I would say from the nervous system perspective, that is where you are going to lean initially because its only job is to keep you safe.
Yes, absolutely. But then again, like I said, despite all of that, Sybil, eventually people have to get to understand who they are, what they're looking for. We're talking about value, we're
Yeah.
talking about
Yeah.
really paying attention. But unfortunately, for many who do not have clinical knowledge like we do, it's very, very hard to read into other people. So, what kind of final advice, because we're soon to end this,
Yeah.
what kind of final advice would you give to the listeners in terms of what do they need to really focus the most of their energy on to avoid falling in that trap?
Yeah. I think, and this is both men and women, because we are taught um, in our culture current and for a long time, we are taught, for different reasons to not listen to what our bodies are telling us.
Mhm.
So men are not taught to listen to their bodies because men are supposed to be stoic. They
Yes.
can maybe be angry, but they cannot be scared. They cannot be sad. They cannot have those feelings. And clearly, this is not truth. This is what we are taught. And then women on the other side are taught you can feel these things. You can be sad. You can be scared, but you sure as heck can't be confident and you can't do these kinds of things. And again, depending how intense that conditioning is, our role to be everything to a man, and that's what our worth, we have just learned to not listen to our insides at all. So men struggle to listen to what their insides are telling them. Women are struggling to listen to what their insides are telling them. And so really attuning, like learning to attune to the physical reactions that come with emotion. So if your heart starts racing, if you're feeling hot, if you're clenching your fists, if you're doing these things in your body, if you feel that pit in your stomach, we got to pay attention to those.
Mhm.
We've got to pay attention because those are going to tell us things. And those are things that our nervous system is looking for, like heart racing, warning sign. Or, noticing that feel of like longing for someone, and what does that mean? Is that different than just like desire and things like that? So really becoming so much more in tune to yourself and listening to yourself and your body, that is going to give you the most accurate information on if this other person, if I should continue, because those things will show up early on. And we so often are like, yeah, shh, like they're really cute. I don't want to be quiet, body. Like I don't want to listen to you because I'm interested in this person. But if those like warning signs keep showing up, we just need to listen. We just need to look at them.
Absolutely. So before we conclude this workshop, Sybil, if you could let everyone here to be able to know how can they find you in case they need to be able to cover a little bit more topics that we didn't really have the chance to be able to do today. So if you could just share your information, either like a website or
Sure.
they need to fill.
Yeah. So if you're in Colorado, because I am only licensed in the state in which I work, is arvadatherapysolutions.com. And so that's only for people in Colorado because of that. But then the work I do around coercive control and domestic violence and more of that work is actually risingbeyondpc.com. And that's Rising Beyond Power and Control is the business name and what I do there. And yep, different work in different places.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Sybil, for taking the time out of your relaxing Sunday afternoon to join us and engage with the valuable tips and advice that you shared today. And we also look forward for the many upcoming workshops that we have throughout 2026, featuring new expert panelists and a wide range of engaging topics focused on dating and relationships. So I would like to wish you all a wonderful rest of your Sunday afternoon, and we look forward to connecting with you very, very soon. Signing off for now.